For sure, we're still looking at minimum wage. Remember earlier we told you that the tripartite committee yesterday submitted their report to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation for onward submission to the President for him to now give his final verdict on what should be our national minimum wage that will now be sent to the National Assembly. Well, to look at that and other issues that are surrounding negotiation so far and to where we are this morning, I have someone who has been part of previous negotiations, public hearings on labor matters, especially when it comes to minimum wage. It is comrade and an engineer, Howard Bunana, a public affairs analyst, also is a former national vice president, Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, also the vice president, Mine Coalition of Northern State Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. Very good morning to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Quite a handful of profile there. Let me begin with your last experience as a member of minimum wage during the last administration. Give us an insight of what it used to be and why we're where we are today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I represented Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises during the first tenure of last administration on minimum wage, especially at the public hearing at the National Assembly, which was led by the Speaker of House of Representatives then, Honorable Yakubu Dogara. So I represented NASME at that public hearing. So there are two issues in the minimum wage issue. Definitely, number one, the salaries that are being paid by workers is inadequate. It's not a living wage. You cannot survive with the minimum, unlike what is happening all over the world, where the minimum wage, you can survive and save. You can spend at least maximum of 20% of your salary on your cost of living. Now, the salary cannot even maintain a public servant for 1 week. So you can see definitely the salary is very, very inadequate. That is from the perspective of the labor or the workers. On the perspective of government is also right. Government cannot spend all its funding on recurrent expenditure, whereby the recurrent expenditure is sometimes 80%. We see the ratio of recurrent and capital expenditure, 80% go to the recurrent expenditure. And government will also not tolerate. It's also not possible, not acceptable to spend most of its recurrent expenditure or expenditure on recurrent minimum wages and allowances and other costs of running government. So you can see the labor, the workers have a point. Yes, they are getting inadequate salary. The government also has a point. They cannot spend over majority of their income or earnings on maintaining a small percentage of the population. But then, this issue of minimum wage is all centering about public servants then. The other group in the workforce are left out.
Yes, I was coming to that later, but let's go back to the negotiation. Just like you said, labor is right in its demand, and then the federal government is looking at what it can afford.
Exactly.
Instead of putting everything into capital expenses.
Yes.
Now,
recurrent
expenses, I beg your pardon there. Now, if you're looking at the demands of labor, looking at the present state of the economy, don't you think labor has the right to keep demanding that government should up their salary or income?
Yeah, I suppose the labor have the right to demand for more increase, but on one condition. Is the workforce actually generating the national cake? And then, mark you are only talking of labor as per public servants. You are not talking of the private sector employed, the informal sector, and
But the private sector were part, the organized private sector
yes,
were part of the
that is why I was
negotiation.
part of the negotiation too. But we are having, at that time, we clearly told labor, the private sector, especially the micro, small and medium enterprises, cannot pay the same wages the way government is paying, because government has a kind of inflow, constant inflow of revenue, while our micro small enterprises and the private sector, especially the micro small enterprises and the informal sector, the policies of development of the MSMEs, some of the good policies government put in place to build the MSMEs are not being implemented well. So we told the labor, except if they will now engage further to seeing some of these economic reforms of government to develop the industry. For example, I will mention just two issues we were arguing with the labor then. I was the one talking with the NLC president at the meeting. I said, government have promulgated public procurement whereby they will patronize micro, small and medium enterprises in their public procurement issues. It's not being implemented. And all over the world, public procurement is used to develop. If you can get the executive order 3 and 5, where the government say 40% of public procurement will go to micro, small and medium enterprise, that is enough market. If you give 40% of that market to the MSMEs, and you work with the organized private sector to make sure implementation that 40% of public procurement goes to MSMEs, then MSME can pay that. So if labor, they want to, their mode of engagement with government, they are looking at the revenue income of government, what they are earning from oil revenue, what they are getting from other sources. That's the argument. But it's only for few public servants, which is also, I agree with them, it's not adequate. So the negotiation shouldn't just be increase our minimum wage. I want the labor, they have the right to demand for a living minimum wage. But the negotiations will go further. How do we get the money? How do we generate the money? What are the policies? Some of the policies that have been promulgated for economic and industrial development of the nation, like Executive Order 3, where public procurement 40% will go to micro, small.
So why we having setback in that Executive Order 3, where we don't have so much patronage on these small, medium businesses? Because if that has been addressed, I know we will not be talking about this. The organized private sector would have been in the forefront also fighting for increments.
Yeah, I was also fortunate to be when the federal government promulgated the Executive Order 3 of public procurement. I was also represented my own association in the negotiation in Lagos with the then Minister of State, Trade and Investment, and all the public procurement issues. What we call for, the procurement policy need to be looked upon, whereby stringent conditions are being put in the public procurement, which will make the micro, small enterprises not be able to access the public procurement issue. For example, the condition of putting high turnover. They will say before you can contract, you must have a turnover of so amount. They will also say you must do previous work. So we said, review these procurement laws, make it only that, don't ask for too much turnover from the micro, small enterprise. That's why that law could not be implemented. The procurement laws, the National Procurement Council has not been put in place. So that we have been advocating for that. Let's put a National Procurement Council, review the procurement laws for micro, small and medium enterprises. Let them not give them stringent conditions that they cannot meet of, say, turnover. You must do this, you must do this. We also give suggestions. We are not saying also we should forgo quality and competence, but make a subcontracting policy in the public procurement. Any big company that get over 500 million naira government contract, it should be obliged to give subcontract to micro enterprises in a small level, but that should be monitored. It should also be, the Ministry of Labor then, there was even a law we were working with the Ministry of Labor to make sure that all public procurement that is being awarded to big companies, they must show evidence of subcontracting to micro, small and medium enterprises. So if labor can now look at this issue, then their own engagement with government, they are also helping the government, because I also agree with government. They cannot give all their income to the current expenditure to just few percentage of people who are working in the public service. The negotiation, this is why the private sector, this is why we have been arguing that we should be carried along in the negotiation to look at these policies to make the micro small enterprise survive. And there is also another very big opportunity which also has not been adequately implemented by government. We have the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We have the global trade value chains. There is negotiations going on at the international global trade and industrial value chains, whereby the informal sector, the micro, small, and medium enterprises will be integrated into those value chains. So if you now put a public procurement law, which you are patronizing 40%, you are patronizing the micro, small, and medium enterprises, and you adequately implement policies that will integrate micro and informal sector into the global manufacturing and trade and industrial value chain, so there will be income. Then we can now come and say, yes, let this minimum wage be reviewed, just the way it is happening all over the world. Well, even in the developed world, even private employee, you cannot employ and give him a small token. There must be a minimum something you have to pay your employee if you engage the services of anybody. So we are looking on that. So we will support Labour to look at those things, incorporate this into our discussion, not just to emphasizing on the amount of money. That will not be achievable without addressing these two issues.
Okay.
Otherwise,
now you've mentioned some of those things that will be addressed, but let's come back to the present days.
yes.
We saw the back and front where Labour and the government were dragging what should be a living wage. This time we are not talking about a minimum wage, just like the scenario you created. The minimum wage is not enough to take care of all we are. So just what you want is a living wage, what will enable you to survive in terms of what you earn. Now, where we are now is the 62,000 naira, 250,000 naira. Good enough. You've been trying to emphasize why you think government cannot pay. But if you look at the argument from your affiliate bodies, there are other bodies who, in support of Labour, are thinking that governments can afford to pay beyond what is proposing, 62,000 naira. While country gets to a compromise between the government and Labour in terms of agreeing on a particular price, I know that Labour must always push government to the wall to ensure that they get what they want. But looking at the present situation, don't you think that we are pushing for too much on the side of Labour, and that probably government is not compromising on its own part to see that Nigerians get at least what we tag the living wage, looking at the present economic situation?
As I told you earlier on, definitely 62,000 is inadequate. Definitely it cannot sustain the worker. But then if you look at the other obligation on the government, where even I was privileged also to work in the public service myself, and even to a senior level of public service, because I served as special advisor to my governor in Bauchi from 1999 to 2007. So I was privileged to be close to the governance corridor of power as an aide to the corridor of power. Now, if you look at the obligations of government, look at the socio-economic indicators, education, healthcare, security. I think the whole earnings of the government, if they put it in just one sector, it will not even be adequate for that sector. Because I was privileged to be close whereby the budgeting system, because when my governor is trying to prepare a budget, we normally receive demand from all the sectors, what they need. And then the Ministry of Budget and Planning also bring to government what the expected earnings of the government for that year. So when you look at the demand for education alone, or one sector, education, water resources, health, security, it will even consume the whole budget, road infrastructure. So now, there is definitely, except if the government business will just be to pay salary, then government can afford to. So that is why I say, while I agree with Nigerian Labour Congress, the money is inadequate. It cannot be a minimum, but the labor should now come further, propose certain collaboration with government, propose some agenda on how to adequately, for example, skill.
That's why you're here now, so that you maybe you as a way of talking to them. You are part of that sector also. What should labor should be looking at now? If you say 62,000 naira is not even enough on their demand, so what should be some of those? You've talked about the small, medium enterprises. Now there are other areas now that we need to look at. What should they be looking at now? Because we know 62,000 naira is not enough. Even state governors are even saying they can't pay 60,000. Local governments also are saying the same. Now, what should we be looking at now?
The amount you meant me to suggest?
No, not the amounts now. There are other areas who should be. If government cannot pay minimum wage, what should government be doing?
No, government can pay if there's what we call sustainable, innovative, and strategic private sector driven public-private sector partnership, collaboration, linkage, and multi-stakeholder engagement. I want to call on the government for them to be able to meet up with the labor demand. Let them re-strategize in their economic policy implementation. Government is not really carrying out the organized private sector in their policy implementation of economic policy. This is what government should do. That is why I don't agree with the government that they are not carrying the real organized private sector. It is all mentioned all over the world. Private sector are the engine of economic growth. But in the policy, I'm a witness, I'm a living witness, because the public procurement law, executive order, the international trade negotiation, how to integrate informal sector into international trade value chain. There is no good synergy. And also, there are also interagency collaboration between economic management ministries. It also needs to be strengthened for the government to be able to raise. Because government has instruments to raise the resources to pay that minimum wage, even if it is 50,000, 100,000, government has that instrument. What government has now is the instrument to raise the money, to generate the fund to pay the living minimum wage. But they are not using the instrument well. So I wish to call on the government to engage more with the organized private sector in their economic policy implementation. Yes, the organized private sector are represented in committees and boards, this and that, but it's not adequate because I've been, as I told you, I am fortunate to be working. So the collaboration with, so what government should look at, what I want to advise is that government should use the only sector that has the instrument. It has the instrument to generate this fund to pay the living minimum wage, the way labor wants. So instead of giving statistics, America is paying the minimum wage, so countries, you know, you can see all this data. But we are not, the economic policy implementation is not the same. So the public service, the government needs to bring in the private sector closer. For example, whenever they are declaring any economic interventions and whatever they are doing in the economic policy to develop the economy, they should engage more in policy formulation and implementation. That is not adequate. That I want to say. Government, that one, there is a room for government improvement also. So I don't support government in that they have what it takes to generate the money to pay the workers, but they are not using it properly. That's lack of the collaboration with the organized private sector, the business membership organization, because they shouldn't, public servants are the one raising policies. They are the one initiating economic policy, a program that will salvage the economy. Instead of listening, we are the organized private sector should be the one to bring up suggestions for government to back it up. But the suggestion is coming from government. So that also should be reviewed by government. That's what I want to advise the government on. Yes.
Now, if you're talking about multiple sources where governments can raise this money,
yes.
for now, or for a very long time, Nigeria has been relying on crude oil as one of our major economic revenue generation. Of recent, we've seen a decline in what we get, simply because of other countries now have the same crude oil. People can go and buy from other places. The issue of fuel subsidy, many are saying that is the reason why we're where we are today, when the president announced the removal of fuel subsidy. Do you think fuel has anything to do with the present situation we are? Because governments generate money from crude oil.
Yeah, are you saying the fuel price, the crude oil price, or the fuel
the crude oil price at the international market is not a problem, but because we don't refine, but we import, and you know the cost of importing is high. Before now, government was paying subsidy for those who were importing it. Now we are not, we don't get subsidy. Those who import have to sell at a very high price. Is it part of the problem we're facing at the moment, sir?
Yes, you know, it is a known fact that any country that depends on raw commodity trading, they will not develop their economy by through raw commodity trading, whereby we just export the crude oil and import the refined products from crude oil, all the byproducts, and the PMS and the diesel, everything itself. So you can see it's a wrong already. We are already not putting, by relying solely on crude oil income, we have got it wrong. Because no country develops its economy through raw commodity trading. If we had all developed the refining capacity and the processing capacity of our crude and exporting all the byproducts, it wouldn't have been the issue of the subsidy issue, that this thing wouldn't have arisen, because there would have been enough. Because what people are even getting, they will tell you the cost of fuel in social countries is so that just the government, when they increase the fuel price, that is what they argue. But it's not, because it has not been, we are not implementing our economy the way those countries, so the way those countries are implementing their economy. So, number one, I want the issue of saying, yes, removal of subsidy has caused a lot of hardships on Nigerians. We must admit that fact, that yes, it has caused a lot of hardship, which is uncalled for. But the reason has not been just today. It is an action that has manifested through our previous, over long 4 decades, reliance on crude or unprocessed or raw commodity trading. So what you are seeing today is not what happens today as a result of the present activities. It has been cumulative action of our economic policies, relying on crude or unprocessed commodity trading. The example is given like Cote d'Ivoire now, where cocoa, it was given that they export cocoa, raw cocoa, where they make about, is it $5 billion or more? I cannot remember the figures. But the processed cocoa will give about $40-something billion when the byproduct of cocoa. So the issue of the subsidy, the hardship that has caused, the reliance of it is all caused by the previous cumulative policies of previous administration in the country. Since ever the discovery of crude oil, when the crude oil prices were going high, that reliance on the crude oil prices alone without processing the byproduct is not cumulative. It's not just peculiar to a particular administration. But yet, fuel subsidy has really caused hardship to Nigerians. Government should deploy certain measures to emergency measures to address this suffering, especially the food security, the energy something, this and that. But at the same time also, the crude oil also is now, with the green energy, the climate change issue. We have to go to green energy, climate change issue, and this other thing. So there are other opportunities. So the crude oil may no longer even be more as important as it used to be before, because of the new green energy and the climate change issue that has come up. So that's what I can say.
Okay, let's look at go back to the issue of labor and minimum wage.
Yeah.
To the ordinary woman in the market, once there's an increment in salary, there's this tendency for them to increase the price of commodities.
Yes.
Some persons will tell you that because we don't have a policy of price control, so it's always easy for them to inflate prices of commodities in the market. Is there a connection between this increment in salary and prices of goods and commodity, or there are other factors that should be associated to that area?
No, definitely, increase in salaries is speculation. People, the market speculation. If you are selling your product when you had that your customer has gotten more, that's speculative issue because we don't have a very good consumer protection processes which is being in place, not directly price control, but the consumer protection or consumer rights issue. Because some of the, because if there are a good consumer protection issues, there will be follow up on the cost of really what is your landing cost. For example, some people are even arguing that the landing cost of the refined petroleum product is not what is being declared at the landing cost, that it is so super low. So yes, there is a when the salary increase and price increase in prices because the inflation. These are the two things that go, but it's speculation and manipulation which need to be addressed, and it should need to be strategized. Also, this all when there's a very good collaboration with government between the private sector, all these things to be addressed because you can. I remember there's a strategy you can do to address this issue of price control issue, price increase and this thing. But yet, salary increase is one of the major factors of raising prices of commodities in the market. Yes, I agree.
Okay, the issue of private sector, of organized private sector, are playing a very crucial point area in terms of helping government to generate revenue. So many persons will tell you that the enabling environment is not there for small, medium-scale businesses to strive. You are from that very sector. We talked about power, one of the major enablers of small business. Labor is also clamoring that government should reverse the recent increment in electricity. I'm talking about the ban that it should be, there should not be banning for consumers of electricity. Looking at that area, how do you think we can improve electricity for us to enable small businesses grow in the economy?
Yes. Incidentally, my background is also power. I work in part of my public service. I work with the NEPA.
Okay.
So I have small generation department of NEPA. So the issue of the enabling environment generally, power is just one of the.
So let's just start from there. Let's begin with power.
Okay. Now the issue of power. A lot of policies have been put in place to get power from other renewable sources and to get off-grid, mini-grid, metal grid services in power. And then, but we need to, if we can have a medium-term plan for building our competence in the local content capacity in the power sector, just like government is driving local content in automobile sector, local content in oil and gas, there should be also a local content drivable local content policy, such that all the generating capacity, how we can generate our own power, build up that local content capacity. If we build that local content capacity, we'll be able to generate our power at a minimum cost. It's because of the raw materials, the equipment we need to generate the power, we are importing them. So that's why the cost of power is very, very high. I recently, I also represented the private sector on a discussion with African Development Bank. They said the present president has applied for about $2 billion loan from African Development Bank, which he wants to use in to put those money into energy and power. That they want an input from the organized private sector and civil society. How do we want this money to be, if it is injected into the past $2 billion, where the present administration having that move to inject $2 billion into the power to address the issue of the power. So we were also part of the roundtable discussion at NIPS, at African Development Bank last year, 2023. And then the same period, NIPS, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, senior executive course for 2023 was also on power, energy, and climate change. So we also went on a private roundtable discussion at NIPS school. So the discussion we were suggesting about the power issue, build our local content capacity to be able to get even operate the generating the transmission system with more of local content capacity in parts of raw materials needed, or at the minimum thing you can address immediately. Now all these power equipment are coming from iron, copper, solid mineral resources. Now start with building our local content capacity to process the mineral, solid mineral to secondary raw material to give these equipment manufacturer to use. If you do that, if you start with that one, the cost of your equipment will be reduced. Once the cost of the power equipment are reduced, then you can generate power cost effectively. So for us to address that issue, of course, yes, the cost of generating power is high, yeah, but we need to build that our local content capacity, which we have that capacity. We have that. We all need to do to address that thing so that your raw material, you can now work with the equipment manufacturers, give them value-added raw materials for manufacture of cables, transformers, electric generators, and get a skill also, and then build your own skill to be able to do that, so that you can control your local content in power generation should be above 50, 60. If we can do that, we know we can get power at a cheaper level, because we have all the potential, all the sources of renewable energy, all the sources of power generation from all alternative sources, we have them. So this is the only way, my suggestion, and government needs to play a very key role in that, in innovative funding. Work with the professional body, Nigerian Society of Engineers, the power professionals, the investment bankers, the trade, review our trade laws. In 2011, the National Planning Commission invited us for a seminar to show us how Egypt did innovation and inject about 60,000 megawatts into their power system through innovative way they did. Because they said that it was in a National Planning Commission here. They said Egypt look at their own policies. When they saw that there is no way, they use their military. They use their military platform and were able to inject 60,000 megawatts into the grid of Egypt. So we should be innovative also. Let's do innovation to build our local content capacity. For example, transformer oil and some of the power consumables of power distribution is being imported, even into iron, bolt and iron that is used in power distribution, we import them. So we are relying so much on importation for our power generation.
You have been in the mining sector also.
Yes.
We have the Ajakuta Steel company that has been lying fallow for a very long time. Governments have been trying to revive it. What's the problem of that? If we're talking about local content in power production, we have areas where we can get these raw materials for us to encourage such industries, but we're having them domiciled everywhere, and yet they are not working properly.
Yes, thank you very much. You see, the mining sector actually, it is a sector that can catalyze Nigeria's socio-economic, trade, industrial development, because it is the sector, it's linked up to almost all sectors of the industrial system. Because if we talk of energy, it is the mining sector is where the raw materials are coming. If we talk of building and construction, it is the mining sector. If you talk of transportation, it is the mining sector. So basically, what we need to do, in my own suggestions, we have not gotten it right just by putting up some elephant projects. We need some modular kind of industries, the steel industry, India, China, they did not start with building very big, gigantic steel plants. We have not even, basically our mining sector has a lot of challenges. We have not addressed the issue of our capacity to provide international standard mining technical services, exploration services, laboratory analysis, beneficiation, mine design. We have not actually developed this, our local content also in that sector. That is why the Ajakuta still, we are blaming, they don't want us this and that. So it was actually not the synergy of the establishment, all the value chain development. We need to build our professional capacity, have our own capacity to actually explore this, explore the iron and steel minerals, process them and feed them into the Ajakuta.
All right, I know that time will not be enough for us to look at that very area, but I hope if we call you again next time, you avail us your time so that we'll look at other sectors. Thank you so much for being on the program. Engineer Howard Bonono is a public affairs analyst, also the Vice President, Mines Coalition of Northern States of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, also former National Vice President, Nigeria Station of Small and Medium Enterprises. Thank you so much again for being on the program. All right, I will move over now to Benin Network Studio, where Philip is standing by to continue with the discussions on This Morning on ITV.